You're listening to Everything's Canceled podcast with your hosts,
Herman
and Lorena. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening to right now and follow us on Instagram at Everything's Canceled podcast. In each episode, we discuss topics in detail that could be triggering for some listeners, so please listen with care.
All content provided in this podcast is for general information and entertainment purposes only. Any copyrighted content reproduced in this podcast is done so in accordance with Section 107 of the Copyright Act, allowing fair use and is not an infringement of copyright. Any information discussed referring to specific incidents are allegations only, unless proven otherwise in a court of law. Due to the changing nature of laws, rules, and regulations, the hosts will make no representations to the accuracy or completeness of any information in this podcast and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, nor the availability of this information, for any losses, injuries, or damage from the display or use of this information.
Welcome back to Everything's Canceled podcasts with your hosts,
Lorena
and Herman.
That's backwards.
I know you wanted me to introduce us this time, so it's all backwards.
You would say Herman and I thought you would say your name.
Who's canceled this week, Lorena?
Maybe we're uncanceling Garth. I'm not. The fans are. We got some.
Garth continued.
Yes, we got some fan mail. That's what they call it.
Garth interrupted. More Garth. The Garth goes on.
So I want to explain how our fan mail works so that you listeners know. So when you're listening on Spotify, I don't know about Apple Music or
The World
Apple
According
Pods.
to Garth.
Okay.
That's the last one.
Thanks. What was I saying?
You said we should joke more.
I take that back.
Yeah, already taking it back.
If we're too boring and you want to hear humor, do you really want to hear Herman's?
Yeah.
Who's funnier? Tell us who's funnier. Okay.
We're not funny.
We're not funny.
I think I'm funny, but to be determined.
Listen, people describe me a lot of ways and it's never funny. But then every time I say that, my friends are like, you are funny. I'm not funny.
Chris Gaines did it.
Yeah, see, not funny. Okay, anyways, I want to explain how our fan mail works on our end. I can only speak on Spotify because that's what I use personally. So even though our podcast is posted to all the listening platforms, I haven't gotten played with all of the features. But when you are on Spotify and you make a comment on a specific episode, it comes in on our end fairly anonymously. We don't get a name. We don't get an email. It shows
I think it's a username.
It shows a phone number.
What?
And it crosses out the area code and the first 3 digits. So it's XXX, XXX, and then we have 4 digits. I don't know if that's your actual phone number or if it's a phone number that's designated to you through Spotify or however that works, but we are not given any information from how you're contacting us. So
are you talking about if you hit the fan mail one?
Yes.
Okay. If you comment on Spotify, we have it has the Spotify username.
How do you send fan mail? Isn't that through Spotify?
You added that on the
it's a different link
thing. Yeah,
it's a different link
if you click the send us mail link in the episode description. Right.
Yeah. Okay, my bad.
So 2 separate things there, but both ways to contact us if you want to.
Yes, but just so that you know, in the comments, we can't really reply, though. And in the fan mail, we are given nothing of information of who you are. So, for instance, with this episode, we got a lot of fan mail messages. And they, our phone is dinging that we're getting these, we're checking them, and people are like, send me your email so I can send you this information. I have no way of sending you our email. What is our email? So that people have it.
Everything's canceled podcast at gmail.com.
You want to send us something, go there. The best way to reach us is our Instagram messages, though. But anyways, a lot of you guys had a lot to say, a lot of Garth fan defenders, which happens all the time, but I tuned in a little bit more because it's so unanimous. None of the fans think he's guilty. Not that we necessarily said he was guilty, but we people know where we leaned a little bit. We're definitely erring on the safe side of believing the victim first.
If we're biased, which of course we are, we're generally biased in believing women or believing the victim. And sometimes it's a little baffling when the case goes the other way. But that's not to say that doesn't happen as well. And sometimes allegations are made up, certainly all the time. You know what I mean? But it seems as though to approach it with any bias, that's the bias to approach it with.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we are a little bit biased in it. We did choose to lean towards, believing the victim in this. But we're open-minded. We don't know. The only people who know if Jane Doe was raped by Garth Brooks is Jane Doe and Garth Brooks. And
Yeah,
even then,
exactly.
that might be a difference of perspective of how a situation went. A lot of people are raped by people who don't think they raped them. And that's, you know, a whole loaded topic.
Well, and that goes for any of these cases too. And that's kind of what it's all about, is that, like, certainly somebody knows the absolute truth because there are people that were there and people who are involved. And then there are always people who are, like, in, you know, the next couple degrees of, you know, contact with these people who also know who also know what's involved. And often times those people are involved in covering up a lot of things. But then it's left to us, as we're normal ass people, normal consumers of media, who are left to try and parse the truth out of, like, what bits of information we have. And I think that's like a process that we're all involved in when we're trying to figure out what's the deal with so-and-so and why were they canceled, right? And so that's just like, that's that process that we're all a part of. And it's like, that's what we intend to do here every time, is to, like, pick that apart.
Right. So we received a lot of fan mail, and in particular, one specific user who you could tell, like, she was dinging a message, you know, every few minutes. It was clear that she was listening to the podcast and making her comments of corrections moment by moment of things that she heard. Some I agree with, some I don't. My first point was to say that we appreciate any contact that you make with us. We are so open to being corrected. That's why we're back here today. This is mostly a corrections episode, and then to maybe explore the defensive side of Garth a little bit more. I want to talk about what the fans are saying in defense of him and why, you know, some of this lawsuit or all of this lawsuit is false. So the first thing I'm going to do in this episode is just address a couple of quick corrections on just things that didn't heavily matter to the story necessarily, but I just want to give out some straight facts. And again, I appreciate the one specific fan that reached out to us quite a bit, and I was able to track her down on Reddit, have a messaging conversation on Instagram, and I was like, is this just going to be a staunch defender of Garth Brooks? And it turns out there's some, like, family connection between her daughter and Garth Brooks' daughter, so that maybe gives her a little bit more incentive to pay such close attention the way that she has to this case. So anyways, you know who you are out there. I appreciate you reaching us, and even when I was disagreeing with you or opposing views or, you know, questions to you, you hung in there and followed the conversation through and provided me with, most importantly, the original petition that Jane Doe, the victim, had sent to Garth Brooks' lawyer. And that first version, where in the first episode I was talking about the official lawsuit claims, that was like 23 pages. This one was 68 pages. I read all of it. It was the original draft of that was sent as what he calls a money shakedown. Basically a request of, like, this is what my client's testimony will be if this goes to court. If you agree to a settlement, this will all go away, but this is what she claims. And there were some things in there that were worded a little bit differently than the official lawsuit. So I'm actually going to go through a few differences of that too. So right off the bat, the first couple of little corrections I just want to make from the last episode. So I said that you can only get Garth's music on iTunes. That's not true. You can only get it on Amazon Music, which the millennial in me, I don't think knew there was much of a difference.
What's Amazon Music?
One is a streaming service. One is they're different.
iTunes, I feel like I've maybe bought music or like a movie or something on iTunes before.
Back in the day, I did.
I've never used Amazon Music.
Yeah. So,
to my recollection.
Which I think is what, like, my kids use on their Alexa thing in their room. Alexa. So okay. I think I actually have Amazon Music, but for them. Okay. So I don't use it. And I said that his music...
So many services, you know.
Right. And I said that his music can now just recently be found on Spotify. That's not true. His music was uploaded without permission to Spotify recently, and it was already removed. So he's not loosening his grip on his rights to his music. Like, I thought.
He's remained a he's remained like essentially off streaming services or whatever, other than Amazon Music, I guess. So that's in what capacity is he on Amazon Music?
You have to buy the album.
Okay, yeah, so you have to buy his albums and
on
download
Amazon
them.
Music. And I don't know how Amazon Music might have a thing where you pay monthly so then you don't have to buy certain things, but for whatever reason he feels like he is paid well or recognized well on that's where he stays.
Have some sort of deal with them. Yeah, but I mean that's what we said, was that it's not available to stream for free. You have to pay to buy his albums digitally. But it's just not available on iTunes. It's available on Amazon Music instead.
Yeah, I remember when the commercials came out for what is it? Alexa or Siri is Amazon? Alexa? The Alexa commercials, him and Trisha were on the commercials.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. So they must have some sort of deal with Amazon.
Right when I bought my kids', I remember seeing them on the commercial.
Okay.
And being like, aren't they kind of too big of celebrities to be on? But it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that was the first correction.
So, not this one, but the other one.
Right. Okay, I also said that he had a residence in Mississippi. It was just misspeaking. It's the victim that lives in Mississippi. He currently resides in Tennessee. Okay, so and he's also well known in Oklahoma. That's where he's from. And seems like his kids still live in Oklahoma.
And is that potentially why didn't he file the lawsuit in Mississippi? Was that correct?
Yeah, I think I just was reading so much of this was filed here, that I think I jumbled up some stuff. So that's my correction. He is not a Mississippi resident. She is.
Yeah, they did both file lawsuits.
Yes. So now getting into a little bit more of the juicy stuff, I did find out what her financial burden was that caused her to become reliant on him, and that is that her husband had lost his job suddenly and she became the breadwinner of the family. So that was the sudden why she became vulnerable in that situation.
Do they have kids? Do you know?
I'm pretty sure. I guess I can't.
I mean, we know she's married.
Yeah, and she's older.
We did find out a lot of details about her. Obviously, we're not going to expose her name or anything like that, but.
Well, I'm just going to kind of jump into that conversation. So the fans of Garth Brooks who are defending him feel very strongly that her name should be outed for two reasons. One, that she outed his name, which you know how we're going to feel about that you have a right to name the person that you're accusing, and any victim in a story has the right to protect their name. I get why that seems unfair, especially if he does end up being innocent. That sucks. But our system is there to protect victims, whether they're liars or not. The other reason that they want to out her name is because Garth and Trisha have been very good about crediting on their albums, on their videos, on everything, who has done their hair and makeup and whatever else, right?
Okay,
they credit
people who work for them.
Yes, you can read that on every little thing that they do. And since they don't have very many, there's basically three main people. I'm not going to tell you which one is which, okay? But there is a woman named and there is are pretty much the only people who have ever done their hair and makeup. So when this came out that he raped his hair and makeup artist, people came after the only people that they can find and are giving them death threats. And the victim here did not really clarify. They feel like they threw the other makeup artist under the bus with these allegations. By not naming herself, she left them vulnerable. But I liked your point about this.
We'll be right back.
I am Joseph M. Leonard, the host of Constitutionalist Politics Podcast. Hoping you will tune in every weekend. Also hoping you will watch for the companion Constitutionalist Politics book, Politics from a Christian-based U.S. constitutionalist perspective. Thank you all. Take care. God bless.
Yeah, so you're saying that by being anonymous, but that we know that this person did hair and makeup for Garth and Trisha, that since, they've credited the people who've done their hair and makeup in the past, it could really only be one of several people, right?
Well, either of these two main people.
Yeah, so essentially two people. And fans have contacted these people as well. I'm sure they've received threats or whatever from people who are, defending Garth.
Well, and it puts that person in the position where if they say, oh, I'm not the one who did it, it really does deduce just down to the victim.
Yeah, so by remaining anonymous, essentially, that has made this other person a potential target, or has made them a target for abuse or otherwise.
Harassment.
And so then it really comes down to who is at blame for all of this, right? And it's like, is it the victim's fault for remaining anonymous that this other person who is potentially totally innocent is coming under attack? But it's like, well, you can't blame the victim for that. You should blame the person who's responsible for all of this, which would be, the perpetrator in the first place. But then that also comes down to, and then also, fans for harassing them or doing that in the first place, which is also, bad behavior and unacceptable, but seems to be something that happens all the time, But then I guess that also comes down to how you see the facts of the case and whether you see the person who, has made the allegations against Garth as a victim or not, or whether you see Garth as the innocent victim of somebody who is trying to attack them or not. And so then that would, put the blame on, that's just how you see it.
Right. I guess if Garth is guilty, he also plays a part in that other makeup artist being harassed essentially for being accused of accusing him of what he actually did.
Yeah,
but if
certainly.
but if Garth is innocent and this person is being, quote, thrown under the bus by the anonymous accuser, then really it's not her fault either. It is the fault of the insane fan base that is giving her death threats for being a potential victim and not knowing yet. None of us know.
Exactly.
The only people who know
somebody was in the room, right?
Right. If Garth raped her, the only people that know is her and Garth. And even that can be differences of perspective over a sexual encounter, which does often happen. I 100% believe there are times where people rape people and don't understand what they did as rape. So
maybe for these celebrities, the powerful people who expect people to want to fuck them, right? Like we've said in the past.
Yeah, this is all complicated stuff. Please don't find these people and give them death threats for being potential victims or even liars. Just stop. You might hurt the wrong person anyways. So that was kind of my thought on that.
I mean, it does kind of go both ways because it's like people certainly do deserve to be held responsible, right? And it seems that a lot of people who are celebrities, because by grace of being celebrities and by the fact that they're beloved for their talent, as we talked about before, it's impossible to imagine them doing these horrible things. And so, people will defend them, right? They'll defend them to the death. They'll defend them in any way possible. But then also, these are people who often they hold power in a number of ways. And so it's difficult for one person or any number of people even to take them down with allegations because that doesn't remove their position of power until either something legal happens or till the public opinion of them shifts and they can't maintain that place of power anymore. I mean, that obviously sounds like a Diddy type of situation. You know what I mean?
Holding these celebrities accountable, on one hand, that is what cancel culture is about. But during this legal process, even though our system is totally flawed and fucked, we are supposed to be able to rely on the system to hold these musicians and celebrities accountable.
That's what we're supposed to, yeah.
And I think specifically in the Garth Brooks situation, I don't think we are at the point of holding her or him accountable yet. All the information is not out yet.
Yeah, of course. I think that's kind of part of our conclusion in this particular case.
Yeah, none of the makeup artists should have been getting death threats for accusing him when all the information is not out there yet. But the fans really believe they have all the information. I'm going to get more into specific things that the internet sleuths and fans have unraveled for themselves, whether it's true or not.
Exactly, and I guess I understand that motivation in a situation where the fans feel like they have all of the information or more information, whether they believe that this person is innocent like Garth and they're defending him against false accusations, or whether they believe that this person has done potentially awful things and gotten away with them for a long time. And, that injustice is what is the motivation to want to contact them or say awful things to them or bring them down. And that certainly doesn't really represent justice in any form. But I think it definitely can come from a desire to see that justice served when it hasn't been yet.
Right. So the next few things I'm going to bring up aren't necessarily corrections as much as they are some clarifications and fan opinions of the wording of things or how they perceive these specific things. So first off, while she was his makeup artist, well, Trisha's and then his, over the span of 20 years, something that the fans want you to understand based on who is credited on these albums and whatever else. It seems to be pretty clear that during those 20 years, we're talking about from 1999 to 2018, so that's 19 years, he was, for one, retired from 1998 to 2014.
And that was like for family reasons, right?
Yes. There's a large gap where he's not even working, and neither is she. Like, there's, large gaps of this that essentially the person named is the least of his makeup artists. It is not his main one or Trisha's even. We're talking about like a decade of that where she never worked for them. So their point is that it's a little misleading to say that she was doing it for 20 years. Because sure, over the span of 20 years, but there is years where she didn't.
Okay.
And that she was not the main one at all. So you can find her name named over the span of that time, but it's only like a very small percentage. They say the other makeup artist is 99% their makeup artist, where she is like 1%. Until she started working for him more starting in 2018.
Okay, so to say that like she'd been their makeup artist for 20 years straight isn't really correct, because at times they had other makeup artists, or had even had another makeup artist as their main makeup artist, and then also didn't work for a while. But then also she came back and then she did work for them a lot after that, right?
For the very last year, from 2018 to 19.
Which is like the
when
time
in
question
happened.
For the allegations,
exactly.
Right? Okay.
Right. So the fans are just like, hey, like, I guess you're right, but let's be clear.
Yeah,
there.
She was not their only makeup artist, or, their sole makeup artist for that time, or even necessarily like their like best friend or something like that.
Exactly, which was their next point, is like, people just kept saying they weren't friends by any means. And okay, yes.
Garth's messages were very friendly towards her.
Well, saying, oh my gosh, they worked together for 20 years. They had to have had a friendship. I take that back, right? So if they weren't really working together that much, putting that emphasis on working together for 20 years, you have inevitable friendships because of that. I retract that.
Yeah,
that was an assumption I made.
Yeah, if you assume that was the only person they worked for 20 years straight, then you're like, well, they must be close. But, that doesn't exactly represent their business relationship. So, yeah.
So, however, whereas I really felt like she probably had a relationship with Trisha Yearwood, I do believe she definitely had a friendship with Garth Brooks. We can tell that by their text messages talking about his dick, about seeing each other often. It's clear that they had sex to some degree, whether it was consensual or not.
I did think it was interesting, like the language he used talking, or he like, I mean, I'm sure that, this is like common parlance, but he like talking about her like sweet baby and like language like that.
Love,
where very heart, lots and lots of heart emojis. It was like, I mean, it had that type of like sweetie type of tone, like.
Right, and she knew them as a couple, and like, what is friend anyways? That's such a vague word that we can apply to a lot of things. It seems pretty friendly that she cared about them as a couple. She cared about them individually. She respected them. She feared them. There was a personal dynamic there. And I'm sorry, it does seem pretty friendly to go from being a loose employee to going like, hey, I'm having a hard time, and him saying, well, then come work for me more. I'll help you out. His text messages, oh, sweet baby, I just wanted to help you. Like, I'm still here. I want you to work for me forever. That's pretty friendly. I don't want to play semantics over the word friend. I thought that was kind of a strange thing for people to come at us for, because it seems friendly.
I think you could play it up to some sort of like southern like parlance, like friendliness of like sweetie, sweet baby type of thing too. But you can really tell by the tone of the text messages that there's romantic, or like the sweetness has like a romantic undertone. I think it's pretty clear. And
then his comfortability with her enough to, whether he was actually sexually harassing her or not, or creating a sexual work environment, he let some dirty jokes slide in front of her, which is also a hint at a friendly, he at least saw her as a friend. You don't talk about dildo shampoo bottles in front of someone you don't consider a friend.
And he has like a fairly like clean image, but it does seem like it doesn't seem like dirty jokes are like way out of that either. You know what I mean? Like, he's not like squeaky clean like that either, right? Is that how, like, just as a fan of Garth through time, like, how would you describe him? As squeaky clean, a guy who would never tell a dirty joke, or like
I realized
maybe a little bit of edginess, but he's still a clean. That's my impression, but I'm not really a fan. So
I realized that before diving into this, while I considered myself a big Garth fan, I was a big Garth music fan, and I realized that I didn't actually absorb a lot of Garth media or, you know, watch interviews or watch him on award shows very often, not since I was a kid. So
he had
my
his time
personal
in the
opinion
90s,
of him,
right? But he seems like he's still very famous and has maintained that throughout.
And I was a kid, so if he was dropping dirty jokes at award shows when I was a kid, I wouldn't have picked that up. So I realized I cannot call myself a Garth fan in the way that the people like in the Garth Brooks Reddit can name everything. However,
I think that was kind of one thing that we touched on too, is like Garth Brooks is beloved by fans.
Yeah, he has a huge, deep fan base. However, the one thing I can say that fans do seem to agree on is that there are a lot of rumors of him cheating on his wives.
Yeah,
and it's kind of accepted. Like, they either brush it off as not a big deal,
a known
or
fact,
or maybe it's not true, kind of thing. But it seems like he might be a cheater.
Known secret, is that what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and then also
one of our bingo squares, I'm sure.
The big question for me is like, was it cheating and she didn't leave him because it was actually swinging and it was easier to kind of brush off cheating allegations? Because what celebrity hasn't been accused of cheating? But like, coming out in the country music world, Trisha and Garth as swingers might be actually harder to come back from.
Yeah, I think being open about them having an arrangement, right, of any kind, I think that's something that's clearly incredibly common in the celebrity world, but they're just like, it's rarely, if ever, talked about, right? Even to Will and Jada proportions.
Right. Which, okay, so let's get a little bit into some of the things that fans just shared their opinions, and we can share ours back. A lot of people do not think that they are swingers, and that the threesome comments from her petition were not from her reality, but from her imagination, stemming from Dolly Parton's comments on hosting the ACM Awards with Garth, which we watched.
Yeah.
And I want to know your thoughts, because I know I kind of can guess.
Let's just describe that for listeners too, in case they're not familiar with that. So this is the 2023 American or Country Music Awards, CMAs or whatever. It's a country music award show.
So right before she files her suit, but a few years after the alleged rapes.
Yeah, and so Dolly is presenting with Garth Brooks, right? And they make some jokes about him being the GOAT, apparently. I think he's receiving an award or something like that. Dolly makes a joke about...
She, like, found out somehow, like, whether he posted it somewhere or something.
And I was immediately curious where this may have been, if this is truthful or not.
Or if she just made it up for
it might be
humor.
For the joke, though, yeah.
But she says something like,
I heard that,
I'm your hall pass.
And then I heard that I'm also Trisha's hall pass.
Yeah. And she just sort of concludes that, like, the solution to this...
Yeah, she's like, so maybe GOAT actually stands for Garth Organizing a Threesome.
I saw you online telling all those nice people out there that I'm your hall pass. And that's what he said. And that I'm Trisha's hall pass, too. Hey, I just had a thought. I know why you're doing that GOAT thing. I think that stands for Garth Organize A Threesome. I think you did.
We'll be right back. Eye-Opening Moments podcast are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
I thought I couldn't love you anymore.
He blushes hard.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I couldn't love you anymore, or something like that.
But he's definitely like, I don't think he was expecting that joke, and his face turned red.
He certainly didn't deny it, right?
I mean, but would you ever? You know, like, it's Dolly Parton. So it's like, that could totally be perceived anyway, like, so innocent, like, that's a funny joke. Who wouldn't say Dolly Parton is their hall pass, like, even if you aren't actually attracted to her, like, she's just so fun and is a sex icon of, you know, her era. But then also it's like, well, where did she pull these threesome jokes? Because it's kind of like a known secret in the community that
him and Trisha... It did seem to hit the media pretty big, as far as, like, all the entertainment had to clip it.
You gotta think these celebrities go to parties together without microphones and without cameras at times, and they get to know each other on different levels. Like, they have these friendships. Is there kind of a secret being passed around? They're like, hey, Garth and Trisha are swingers.
Yes, the open secret, once again.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, how did you find out that, you know, when you're invited to a Diddy party, that's what's happening, you know?
It just seems very plausible to me. Like I said in the previous app, man, it seems plausible enough to me, but... I mean, this is another thing that fans seem to deny pretty outright, right? Or a lot of them do, while in the same breath, like, admitting that he's known for cheating or has been known to cheat.
I think it's funny they're more okay with, like, the cheating. Like, they're more accepting of the cheating than they could never be swingers, which I think is funny.
Yeah, wouldn't it be cooler if, like, they were cool with it and they actually had an arrangement and that was, I don't know, I guess maybe that's a bridge too far, though.
I think, especially people in that culture... It's just not talked about as much. The sanctity of marriage is just put up on a pedestal so far that you don't want to believe that a couple is purposely sleeping with other people. You want to believe that Garth just made a mistake and they overcame it.
That seems to go for all types of conservative values in the country music world, and Garth has really stood against that, particularly like when it comes to like gay rights, right? And like things like that.
Yeah, but his fan base also likes to just kind of ignore that.
They either ignore it or they go with him, or he picks up new fans, right? And so it's funny, like I said, it's funny that being swingers would be a bridge too far, but I guess that's just like a little too weird. Obviously, like, it's socially acceptable in society to be like pro-gay, even if it isn't in like country music, or like in some ways it wouldn't be.
I think they kind of brush it off because they're like, oh, well, his sister's gay, and it's not like we see him singing for pride. He very vaguely is just like, love is love, you know? He's not out like wearing a pride flag at his concert.
Yeah, he's not he's certainly not as blatant or as he could be.
So they can like swallow it up enough and be like, well, he does it because he's a good person.
He can still be a good old boy, kind of, right?
Yeah. Again, I think it comes down to the idea of marriage is that it's better if your husband is cheating on you and you forgive it and overcome that, which almost makes like the whole sanctity of marriage even like you were willing to work through that. That's a great success story. Whereas if a couple is swinging and they have boundaries and they're communicating and whatever else, but that you're purposely sleeping with other people, that is less moral. That you're just kind of throwing away what the meaning of marriage is. So I think that's where they're just like, well, Garth has a lot of women and he was probably tempted and he gave in once and him and Trisha got over it and it's going to be okay. Like, he's still a good man. He's stayed married to her this whole time. But yeah, if he's fucking women over every inch of his hotel room, every race and color, and she's okay with it.
Which he seems very proud of.
Yeah, they don't know how to, like, process that. You know, it's, like, too much for them. So anyways, that's my thoughts on all y'all telling me they ain't swingers. I think they are.
I buy it.
Yeah, would not surprise me. Okay, fans keep telling us that this sex position does not exist.
Yeah, the sticking point, another sticking point, right?
I will say, so where he rapes her and talks about dangling her by her ankles, it is slightly worded differently in the original petition. So how about I read that real quick?
Yeah, how so? I'm curious.
Not that different, but
okay, yeah.
I would say that the moments leading up to the rape are worded a little differently too. So I'm just going to go through, and the only things I paraphrased was repeating of names, just sounded a little redundant. Otherwise, it's pretty much word for word here. The incident where she claimed she was raped on May 11th, the original petition described it like this. Garth Brooks hired her to travel with him to LA to do his hair and makeup for a Sam Moore tribute show. They were the only two passengers on his private jet. This seemed unusual, odd from the beginning. Upon arrival, she expected she'd have her own room, blah, blah, blah. We remember all this. She did her best to make the situation comfortable in a relatively small hotel suite given the circumstances. She communicated to Garth Brooks that she was tired and sat down on the love seat, because remember, she doesn't have her own bed or room, sat down on the love seat to watch the movie Tombstone, and she encouraged him to go into the part of the room that was separated by a French door that had a bed so he could shut the door and take a nap. This was her way of politely requesting privacy and separation between each other. He then stood in the doorway looking at Jane Doe and said something along the lines of, "I don't know about you, but I don't like to nap with my clothes on." She replied by telling him she does prefer to nap with her clothes on, saying this was her way of rejecting his invitation. After she said this, however, he completely undressed himself, standing in the doorway naked. He asked her to come take a nap with him. He held out his hands, walked over and grabbed her hands to pull her into the bedroom. Once again, Jane was shocked, and her freeze and fawn trauma response was triggered. She was 100 pounds, alone, without a car, without her own room to go to, and without a way back home. Her 300-plus pound employer told her to come into the bedroom with him while he stood there naked. She was humiliated and did not know what to do, and she felt like there was no other option but to comply. After taking her into the bedroom, he undressed her and proceeded to progress in sexual activity without her consent. From there, Garth Brooks used Jane Doe to live out his sexual fantasy and inhumanely handled Jane Doe like she was a rag doll, holding her by her ankles and slamming her body against his while penetrating her vagina. This dehumanizing assault terrified and disturbed and humiliated Jane Doe and caused severe physical pain. We're going to get more into this, but I'll just read it now. According to the claim, Garth Brooks' handling of her like she was a rag doll had herniated 3 discs in her neck, 2 lumbar discs in her lower spine. And actually, I'll get more into like the doctor's notes later, but that is how the mysterious sex position is described in the original petition. It was much more detailed in the official claim.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't have any mention of the ankles thing in the original.
Inhumanely handled Jane Doe like she was a rag doll, holding her by her ankles and slamming her body against his while penetrating her vagina. That's exactly how it's described.
Okay, but it doesn't mention upside down anywhere in there.
Dangled by her ankles. Okay, so the most research that we did today for this corrections episode was done on porn websites together. That's how we spent our lunch. So why don't you give me your opinions and why don't you cite your sources?
Let's just say after some research, it really did not require very much. We have confirmed that this sex position is indeed possible.
In many ways. There are many sex positions that can be described in this way.
Yeah, with the description given, there are a number of different sex positions that it really could be.
I don't get why everyone is like gung-ho that this is impossible.
These are not your, like, most popular sex positions here. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking things that are, like, pretty awkward, but certainly possible.
There was one in particular, though, that you found. Because we went to, like, websites, it shows animated stick figures doing it, you know, where you can go to, like, sexpositions101.com or whatever and pick a position of the day, and it shows little characters doing it. And you can, like, filter through and be like, okay, one's where you're standing, one's where the women are in control or whatever. So we were able to, like, kind of dial it down.
Yeah, so we found numerous examples, and I think maybe one of the best ones was we were able to find it on different websites that have like animations of sex positions or things like that. But one of them was like a fashion magazine type of listicle article, Stylecaster. Sex positions so acrobatic, you'll be shocked people even attempt them.
I do not think people do this because of what they're comfortable to. It's just like novelty. It's like, let's try this.
We saw this on numerous websites too. Number 3 in this listicle is The Hill.
Okay, I love sex position names. The Hill.
And The Hill involves the female partner leaning against a wall and the male partner doing a handstand or a headstand behind the female partner and penetrating them from behind, but upside down. So essentially the exact same position, but with the male partner upside down instead of the female partner.
And we found this, and the woman is using a bed, which, if you remember the official claim, she talks about how he throws her over a love seat. There is the wheelbarrow position, which is the obvious one that we think was probably what she was trying to describe. But this one, here, open like the one that's like on an actual porno site. Okay.
Yeah, so we're also trying to look for actual examples of people having sex in this position to prove that it is possible. And like I said, it really didn't take that much research before we were able to find one.
This is
more
a
than one, to be honest.
Where I was like, there's just nothing about this that makes me want to do it. But
so
let me describe. I'm going to describe. So close your eyes, unless you're driving. Close your eyes and envision this. There is a bed. She is face down with her hands on the ground, and her head is facing the bed frame.
Yeah,
okay,
like
it's not facing out in the
bed.
room. It is facing the footboard. So like if you are laying face down on the bed and then you crawl all the way over until you are down on the ground and your body remains on the bed, if that makes sense. And then she is using the top of the bed frame, or like the edge of the bed, to kind of support her hips. And he is holding her legs up, or could be holding her legs
knees
up.
on the bed, feet straight up in the air.
Yeah. And while her knees are on the bed because she's being supported a bit, this video, he could easily hang on to her ankles right there and be holding on to her. The blood has to be rushing to her head. I'm not quite sure how this is comfortable. And he is standing over her with his legs spread apart parallel to her arms on the ground. And he is penetrating her vagina like backwards, which also just sounds horrible. It's like not the ideal.
It seems like an awkward angle, but again,
But
definitely
hey,
possible.
he's got a big Roosevelt to like stretch over in there. So nonetheless, this is just one variation where like we are seeing it live. We see it right here. It is happening.
If you need this proved to you, I will be glad to send you the link. Just DM us. Should I give the description?
Sure.
To visit fucking me upside down in the pussy, comma, ass up, fucked and boobs hanging.
Okay.
on X Hamster. Just punch that into your search bar, and I guarantee you'll find this video right away.
X Hamster.
And I can prove it to you.
And don't
or
argue.
We'll send you a link.
Don't argue semantics about how he isn't holding her ankles, because you know damn well when you look at it, he could. He could be, and this is the position I believe they were in.
It is basically the exact position described, other than the part of him hanging her ankles. But I mean, he very well could be. Let's just not even. Come on, watch the video. Hey, it's possible. We saw it right there.
I'm done arguing that it's an impossible position, because like I said, if she was going to make up a rape, why would she not make up an obvious position? Why would she go to the craziest thing that would be like, why would anyone do that? You're doing the obvious thing by discrediting it by it being less likely. And I don't know why. Why do these celebrities, when they rape people, they do it in bizarre positions? It's like a thing.
There does often seem to be like a violent and dominant aspect to these encounters, often involving celebrities. Like I'm thinking of Danny Masterson or Trevor Bauer. I don't know if that's a common theme. It definitely seems to be running through a lot of these cases. And it's clearly possible, besides the fact that it's a little bit unorthodox and maybe a bit awkward as well. But I think that's maybe the reason that it's described specifically in the lawsuit, is because it is so awkward and unorthodox, and that it also, was the potential cause of a certain amount of trauma, whether that was like psychological trauma or physical trauma.
If you're going to have this like sexual experience that isn't your wife on a typical night of your typical sex, and you're going to live out this fantasy with this employee that you're harassing to whatever degree, you might as well go balls to the wall and do all the weird positions and shit that you've never done. Like, you're there, you're doing it.
That seems to jive with her description of Garth, as well as somebody who's proud of his sexual conquest and proud of his sexual ability, and speaks really highly of himself. She says that he brags about it a lot. So when he's going to do this, he's going to do the craziest thing and do it so good and so hard that he breaks your back. Like I said, that seems to be a theme that runs through a lot of these type of cases, where there seems to be, potentially a lot of ego involved, and that leads to like violent sexual encounters.
Right. And this man is also just like flippantly discussing about making shampoo bottles dildos. He's a little wild.
Yeah, if that's to be believed, then, that seems like that type of dirty joking thing is common for him.
Which is another like minor correction or clarification that was also sent, was that supposedly this shampoo dildo comment was made in front of his manager, Randy, and she just happened to be passing by. I don't know what that does to defend Garth, other than if he said it in front of his bodyguard, that only solidifies that he said it. But I think it's like the least of the allegations, so I don't really care anyways. But Okay. He also said it in front of his bodyguard or manager or whatever, Randy. That was also sent to us, so I'm including that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. A lot of what was sent to me...
Randy was there.
Yeah, a lot of what was sent to me, including the original petition, did not make me sway my opinion as much as it just gave me more information that made me feel like...
Yeah, in some ways it just further confirmed it.
But there were some holes that we're getting there.
There were details in their background, right? Like you said, about like how long she'd worked for them and stuff like that. But mostly, like we're saying, like minor things like that, right?
Right. So a couple more things that fans sent us pretty consistently. Clarification, I guess, on the health insurance thing. People are like, makeup artists are independent contractors. They don't get health insurance. Garth was nice enough to pay his employees during the COVID shutdown. And so he's not one to like deny money to his employees. He's always helping people. He even paid them during the COVID shutdown. But this beginning part in the original petition is that he told her he would give her health insurance. So it's not that she's just demanding health insurance. It's that according to her claims in this petition, he offered it. So it says, as the years went on, he started demanding more of her time, asking who else she was working for in the industry. Kind of came off as if he only wanted her to work for him. And the more that she agreed to work with him, the more she was unavailable to work for other celebrity clients, which apparently she was working for Eric Church and Keith Urban quite a bit.
What time period is this describing?
This is the 2018, where she begins to have her husband lost her job, right?
That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that.
The more she agreed to work with him, the more she was unavailable to work for her other celebrity clients, probably resulting in them hiring new makeup artists to replace her. And so as a result of this, she became reliant on him and Trisha Yearwood as her main source of work income starting in 2018. This was the perfect trap for Jane Doe to be groomed by Garth Brooks, who often told her she was the best in the industry and that he did not want to use anyone else beside her. He told her he could get her long-term benefits, such as health insurance. And this came at a time when her husband was in between jobs, and as an independent contractor, she was grateful and excited for this because typically they don't get health insurance or like a salary. So it kind of sounds like the way it's worded here is that she's alleging that he's like, hey, I want you to work for me. I want to be the only one you're working for. You're the best in the industry. I'll give you health insurance and a salary, like if you work for me. Like it's both. It's that she's saying, hey, for me to work for you, I'm going through this hard time. I need a salary and health insurance. And he's also saying, I want you to work for me. You're the best in the industry. I will offer you health insurance and a salary if you stick around. Like it's kind of both. Assuming that the allegations here are true, the idea that she's shaking him down for money and demanding health insurance when she is an independent contractor and they don't normally get those things is not clear.
According to her, it's the opposite, right? That
Right.
he offered it and then never came through on his deal.
Exactly.
Never made good.
It was kind of a deal like, hey, I'm going to give you these things if you only work for me so that you're reliable and consistent. And that helps you in your situation as well.
Okay.
And then he did not follow through on that. So a lot of people are just like, she's shaking him down for money and for things she doesn't deserve as an independent contractor. One, as an independent contractor, I would love to work for somebody who is rich and could provide me with health insurance. And I do think I deserve that. Our system not providing insurance easily for independent contractors is stupid. And I would hope that as an independent contractor, if I'm working for a multi-millionaire and he could provide me with some health insurance for my family, that would be a great opportunity I would be grateful for. Just saying. I think she deserves it, no matter what. Everyone deserves health insurance. Just saying. Okay, some other comments. The fans say that obviously his musicians are good people and would never keep playing with him if they knew he was a rapist or harassing her, because she said, he's grabbing my boobs so much, there's no way these people don't know this is going on. A lot of fans are like, no, his musicians are good people. They wouldn't work with him if they knew he was this way. And they also say Trisha Yearwood wouldn't stay with him because she raised daughters and she would fear he would rape her daughters, which is bizarre. People rape people without raping their daughters all the time. And people also stay with people knowing. But here's the thing. I don't think Trisha Yearwood thinks that he raped someone. I think Trisha Yearwood knows that he sleeps with people and believes that this was consensual. So I don't think she would leave him because I think that's their arrangement. That's what I believe.
Yeah, which is kind of like we said with our worst case scenario, that either like potentially like maybe it could have been consensual and then was like rescinded or something.
Right. So yeah, I don't.
Or at least that would be what you would think that Trisha would think, right? It's
and
like,
I would
okay.
hope that you're right in that she wouldn't stay with him if he was a rapist.
Yeah,
but
or his
also,
musicians as well, right?
People stay with their husbands who are rapists all the time too. So I don't know what makes her special other than people like her. But...
Yeah, so many of these people have networks around them that allow them to do the things that they do and cover it up for them and then maintain their position of power, so they're able to do it in just so many different ways that I just can't buy that at all.
It's
not at all.
It's just a moot point.
There's way too many examples of that. You know, maybe not in Garth's world, but
yeah, how many rapists out there are also married and their wives still, like, it's just not evidence to me that her staying with him means that he never raped anyone. That's dumb. Sorry.
It could be, but it doesn't prove anything.
Okay, so here is the big one that I am listening to. I hear you, and I've got questions too. I hope clarification comes out on either end of this. The LA trip that happened in October that she claims was 5 days long. So not the original rape in May, but the incident where she was alone with him for 5 days, and she narrowly escaped his sexual harassments and advances. So this is where the internet sleuths and fans, they came out with their evidence that this LA trip was 24 hours, not 5 days in October. Okay. And it's questioned if she was even with him for that anyways. And this is where they say, according to her claim, it says that those 5 days started in LA on the 28th of October. But Garth had a dive bar concert in Ohio that night and was with Trisha on her stops on her tours all the days prior to that. Garth fans saw him in Ohio on the night of the 28th. They have posted photos with him. They say that Garth came and talked to the fans that night, and when they asked him where he's headed next, he said he's headed back to Nashville for a couple days, then to Tulsa for Halloween with his grandkids. It is supposedly going to be proven on his private flight logs of his private plane that he flew from Tulsa on October 30th to LA, where she says that this 5-day trip we're already 2 days into that. He flies to LA on his plane to tape Kelly Clarkson and Ellen, and then stays the night for a few hours, and the next morning flies back to Tulsa and is seen trick-or-treating with his grandkids on the 31st. So he was not even there for 24 hours. And of that 24 hours, he taped 2 shows.
Okay, so that
is some sort of loophole where, like...
So this does potentially represent, like, a fairly large discrepancy between, like, her story and what fans are purporting is to be his schedule at the time, right?
Right. And does that mean she was with him for all 5 days, and one of those days took place in LA, and the incidents she said was on that 24 hours that he was there?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can think of things
and so I guess that's the argument, is that he was only in LA within that 5-day period, that she claims he was in LA the whole time, I guess.
Yeah.
That he was in LA, but for less than a 24-hour period, correct?
On the 3rd day of that.
And
5 days.
within that 24-hour period, it involved him making 2 television appearances. So the argument is that, like, how would he have had enough time in LA to also attempt to sexually assault her, I guess, within that time period?
And that she definitely wasn't with him
for
the last couple of days, because he was trick-or-treating with his grandkids with having family time.
And if she was lying about him being there for a full 5 days, then that kind of, like, discredits her whole story, right? Okay, I can definitely see that. I think that if he was there for a full 24 hours, that does put them in the same place at the same time, right? So that does potentially serve to confirm an aspect of her story. But then, like I said, that does cast a little bit of doubt on would there have been enough time for that to actually occur. And then also, if her story was that he was there for a full 5 days and that's just not true, that does seem to discredit her there, right?
But if that is false and she's lying, that means that these internet sleuths and fans are smarter than the lawyer, thought further ahead than she did in this claim that she made with a lawyer for however many months and years she had to plan this ahead of time. that she wouldn't check herself on those days, or at least make this claim during a time when they were together, or just say it was on the 24 hours that they were together. Did she misremember exactly the dates? Like, I have a lot of questions there.
Yeah,
because that is very bizarre to have such a blatant discrepancy.
Yeah, that is questionable for sure. I think that it doesn't necessarily do anything to serve to discredit her other allegation or the other time when she was actually assaulted, right? Other than, if she, potentially discredit her if she's lying about this. But, they were talking about two separate times, right?
Right. I mean, and the rape in May, you can't really discredit that because they're texting about it later.
Yeah. He does seem to confirm that, or he does seem to confirm like that there's sexual activity has taken place of some kind. We do have that.
Yeah, this one baffles me. I'm just like, okay, I hear you. Like, there's a discrepancy there. I don't know what that means or what will come of it. Was it a typo? Was it a mistake? Can lawyers make such stupid mistakes?
Well, and I wonder if, because obviously what's happened is fans have gotten a hold of like the text of the document. They went back and double checked that against where they knew Garth's schedule to be at the time. And like there appears to be a discrepancy there, right? Where it's like she appears to be claiming that he was in LA for the full 5 days. And if they check that against his schedule, it seems pretty clear that he wasn't, if he was contacting fans and doing public appearances and stuff like that, that would be fairly easy to confirm. But then, like I said, that still leaves the question, he was in LA for a certain period of time. Does that fully discredit what she's saying about that or not? And then also like the other just small aspect of that kind of like pops into my head is just like, okay, well, he was clearly in LA to do several TV appearances. Gonna need hair and makeup for that. Did she do his hair and makeup for those TV appearances? That puts them in the same room at that time, just not for 5 days straight. So what's the difference there?
I think that this is going to be one that's going to be easily cleared up. There will be flight logs. There will be evidence.
If there's a trial or anything, then obviously that's going to get washed out. So,
and in response to, my posed questions about that, the two things that fans are saying is that,
which it seems like this is going to be headed towards trial, because my indication of that is that like obviously Garth is refusing to settle. He's filing countersuits instead. Yes. So it seems like she has requested
a jury trial. Yeah. She has requested that, which I'm going to get into all of that. But, basically the retaliated comments from fans is just that, for one, this lawyer is that stupid, and that in the derogatory way they say these Me Too lawyers came in and have turned this into whatever. It's hard for me to even touch on the fact that Me Too lawyers is now a derogatory term. I have a lot that I could say to that. Now everything is just a Me Too.
There's definitely
deduced to nothing.
I just, in that particular case, there's definitely something to seize onto there. I just don't know if it's enough to discredit her there either. You know what I mean? I question that.
And also, that's to the trip where she doesn't even claim to have been raped on that trip. So let's focus on the one where she claims to be raped.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even really the incident in question.
Right. And then the other thing that fans say a lot is, did the lawyer make all of this up? They say that the lawyer claims that there's recorded texts and calls, but that they have not been produced. She just says that she has them. And I have in one of the quote shakedown letters from her lawyer to Garth Brooks' lawyer, I have the quote where she discusses why she hasn't produced them. So we're about to get to quoting the entire original claim here. And so my wrap-up thought before we head into some of the petition stuff is just that with the response from his fans, and I'm not dissing you guys, like I said, I'm so grateful that you guys are like interacting with us on this and engaging and having these important conversations.
Yeah, we appreciate, honestly, like we appreciate being corrected if it's small things or big things or anything, because like I said, that's the whole point here, is to like dig through and try and figure out where the truth is. So it's like, if like we're missing a piece or something like that, like we want to know, know?
Right. Like on behalf of women, I hope she's not lying. On behalf of Garth fans, I hope she is. And so, I am very curious how this goes. I feel like I have, a hand in each basket. I'm a woman and I want to believe that this woman's not lying about something. I'm also a Garth fan, and I would love to find out that a man that I admire as a musician didn't rape someone. So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, we certainly started the pod talking about all the things that you want to like about Garth.
But my final wrap-up thought about how the fans have gone about this is I do have to pose the question of, we've talked about what is cancel culture, who cancels, and I feel like the left, liberals, they're trying to cancel everyone. And we've made the point that the right definitely has their own cancel culture. Both sides have cancel culture. They just kind of cancel for different reasons and different people and at different times.
Totally.
And is this a case where we have seen Garth canceled or almost canceled for things like gay beer and defending gay people, for not performing at Trump's inauguration, for talking about some liberal politic things? We've seen him be canceled by some fans or almost canceled, right?
Yeah, even at times not being particularly direct about it, just being like, well, are you Ford or you Chevy, right? Maybe you should look beyond those things, has been a lot of what his message has been, right?
Right, and I'm focusing on the right-wing politics because he is in country music, and country music culture is typically conservative. Not everyone, obviously. Garth Brooks isn't. And
he's come under fire for these things, like very really, like people like Governor Abbott calling him out, saying, go woke, go broke. And, that's somebody who is ascendant politically at this time as well.
So it's interesting to see that his fan base and the conservative side and the right-wing side has tried to cancel Garth. But when he has rape allegations against him, and maybe he didn't rape anyone, but they jump to find every reason why he did not. I mean, these internet sleuths, his fan base, they went to great lengths to find this information.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
double checking his schedule and nitpicking the wordage of the documents as far as her descriptions of the events, right? All these things.
It's very interesting that conservative cancel culture will throw away someone for drinking gay beer, but they're like, oh no, he didn't rape anyone, and if he did, we're going to wait till we find out, and these makeup artists deserve to be harassed and their lives threatened. There's no way he could be a swinger. There's no way he ever raped someone. There's no way. And I was like, wow. I mean, maybe you're right, but wow.
The gymnastics that will be done to defend a rapist, right? It's a little mind-boggling in so many cases.
And I really felt like he deserved his fan base to go to that length of protection when he stood up for his sister who was gay, or stood up for all of the things he was standing up for when he refused to do Donald Trump's inauguration performance. I don't know, if you love this man, you got to love all of them. So that was just kind of an interesting wrap-up thought when we were getting these messages from his fan base.
Well, and to me, that also seems to jive with like a time at which like to have sexual assault or potential sexual assaults in your background is not something that's going to prohibit you from being ascendant politically as well. And so, we see that with Governor Abbott, or with, Matt Gaetz or Pete Hegseth, or some of these characters who are, ascending politically at this very moment. And so that really ties directly into the types of gymnastics that people will do to defend a rapist, while, like you said, being quick to cancel somebody else who they would deem their enemy.
Right. And so getting into now, I'm going to talk about the original petition that I said is 63 pages long. I read it all, and I just took notes of things that were a little bit different than what is in her original claim, or things that were not included. I'm not going to reread the things about like the rape that we talked about, the sex position being a little different. I'm just going to go over what I haven't mentioned yet. So one more incident that wasn't included was in 2005, so way back. Jane Doe was hired to do the hair for Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood's wedding weekend, which just, okay, if you weren't the main makeup and hair artist, like, wow, you got their wedding? That's kind of a big deal.
He seemed to have a very high opinion of her skills as a makeup artist.
Yeah, and
hiring,
this is,
her for their wedding, and then
this is
also
13 years before she became his main makeup and hair artist in 2018.
Totally. And then also just like being so clear about how, she's the best, and, I have the best working for me.
And the added note to this, that she did their wedding weekend, which meant she didn't just do their hair and makeup. It seems like she did like bridesmaids and things like that. And that maybe there was a couple artists there. Unclear. But she said during the weekend, so she was there for several days, Garth Brooks made a joke to a group of people that Jane Doe could do his and Trisha Yearwood's hair and makeup for a porno. like, I don't know, their honeymoon sex or something. I don't even know. So that was just one of the first comments that is time-wise recorded back in 2005, but it's not included in the claim that I read on the podcast episode yesterday.
Okay, so that's another example of like Garth being like privately like an off-the-cuff dirty joke kind of guy, right?
Yeah. And so going through the differences, I already talked about how he had offered her health insurance, the differences between the rape on May 11th, just some of, how the night went. And then, okay, I kind of wanted to talk about, in the episode prior, I mentioned that she had gone to an OBGYN for damages to her genitals. In the original petition, that is not mentioned. I don't know what that means, why she wouldn't mention it in that one, and she does. It says, according to the claim, Garth Brooks' handling of Jane Doe like she was a rag doll had herniated 3 discs in her neck, 2 lumbar discs in her lower spine. For the next few months following this rape, she could not work at full capacity. She was seen by doctors, chiropractors, and physical therapists to try to resolve the injury. To this day, she is still not completely physically healed, and she eventually had to go on disability. Note how difficult it is to get on disability as a result of her physical injuries arising from the assault. She's also been seen by therapists and psychiatrists for the emotional trauma. And it says that she's been seen by a specialist in that list of doctors. And I'm not sure if that includes an OBGYN as a specialist, but it does not specifically state she was seen by an OBGYN.
Okay, because obviously that would be a specialist, but it doesn't specify if that was the type of specialist that she saw.
So I don't know if I just mentioned that maybe, like you said, the OBGYN could be the specialist, but otherwise it does not say she went to an OBGYN. But the final petition, it does. It says she went to an OBGYN because of injuries, presumably to her genitals. That's why you go to an OBGYN.
Okay, so maybe that's why they clarified in the final filing of the lawsuit.
But essentially that means that there's going to be medical records from doctors, chiropractors, physical therapists, psychiatrists, and a specialist. That's quite a bit of evidence, so we'll see how that goes. And then it does say at the end of it that Jane Doe does request a trial by a 12-person jury in this action for all of the claims. So the reason why he calls this a money shakedown and why the fans say this is all because she sent him these demand letters. She did not send demand letters. Her lawyer sent demand letters for a settlement. The settlement was not met, which is why the claim has been sent. And this is where it's like...
Makes sense. I think that's a pretty normal proceeding for these type of things.
And the wording between 2 lawyers is not going to be as kosher as if I went up to my rapist and was like, I need health insurance and you've been hurting me. And if you don't help me out, I'm going to have to come forward with like all of the ways you've been exploiting me. That's going to be worded very differently than 2 lawyers who deal with this shit all day, and they're just like, here's the settlement, this is what we're demanding, send the money or we're going to go forward with a lawsuit, because they're not there to like, it's just worded differently. So Garth's lawyer is named Bill Ramsey, her lawyer is named Haley something, I didn't write down her last name. So Jane Doe's lawyer wrote several letters of like, she's asking for a settlement. She's not demanding money for being raped. She is demanding money for the time that she had to be out of work due to the injuries of the rape. She is asking for money to pay for the doctor's appointments and therapists that she had to go to because of the rape. You know what I mean? It's different than just being like, you're just demanding money and calling it and saying it's because you were raped. It's like, no, this is how this is done. This is the way that you get reimbursed for what you paid for your rape.
Yeah, they've like quantified the effects of the rape.
Yes. And that is all listed out. She's asking for money to pay for the lawyer fees to make these claims. She's asking for the time off that she spent, for the therapist, and she's going to submit the bills for all of these things that add up and they come up with the number, and that is what she's asking for. So it's not a secret demand letter that she hand wrote and sent to him and was like, hey. And that's where the fans are like, you should see this money shakedown demand.
Yeah, I mean, you could characterize it that way, but obviously that's not the actual way that the process of this goes down. It's, you can call it a shakedown, but...
So between the 2 lawyers, there were several emails, a lot from Haley, Jane Doe's lawyer, where she's like, hey, this is what we're asking for. when are we going to get a response? I think there's 2 or 3 emails where she's like, when are you going to respond to me? Finally, Garth's lawyer eventually replies back in September. He finally says, to be honest, we were expecting more information from you, such as actual medical records and some evidence that the event you described occurred, and more damage information. Will you be willing to send us such information so we can evaluate your claim? This is lawyer talk. The next day, Jane Doe's lawyer responds with that she has already handed over personal testimonies from people in Jane Doe's life who can detail, we've seen that she's distraught, we've seen her have to go to the doctor, we've heard her make these claims. It's redacted, we can't read it, but it says, as well as Jane Doe's detailed account of what her testimony will be if this is not settled and it's taken to court. But I have told her she has the right to privacy that's already been violated by Mr. Brooks once. So I am advising my client to not hand over her private medical records or other evidence such as the other texts and recorded phone calls without good faith showing that Mr. Brooks intends to settle this matter. Until I am confident that this may actually settle pre-litigation, we might as well wait until litigation when my client can receive the same benefit you're all requesting, a free exchange of information. Here are some thoughts of what a good faith showing on Garth Brooks' part would look like. A first offer of settlement, an agreement to mediate, or a similar exchange of information from Garth Brooks. They respond with the preemptive lawsuit on Garth Brooks' end, where he then sues her preemptively before she can put her lawsuit in. So there was no settlement. She just said, we have the text, we have the audio calls, we have the medical records. We aren't giving them over to you if you aren't going to settle. Yeah. Then we're going to take those to court. We're not going to hand over our evidence that you are going to have all this time to try to dismantle before court. That's just giving you a head go in the run. That's not how that works. So I'm telling you we have this, and you will be presented with it in court, not here, unless you're willing to settle. So instead of doing that, he preemptively...
And I think that's a pretty clear answer on Garth's side as well, that when, receiving that information, that what he did was immediately file a defamation suit against her and issue a statement that it's all a shakedown.
The fans
very
say,
clear answer about where he stands or how he's gonna respond to that.
And that's where the fans are like, so we don't even know these texts or phone calls are real that are quoted. Well, it's like, will the lawyer put anything that's in quotes here is from text messages I've seen. We saw a screenshot of some of the texts.
Yeah, that information is very easily available.
One of the texts at least was available to us. She's saying, I have audio recordings. Anything in quotes was quoted from these audio recordings. She put that in a legal document. I don't know why the fans are saying that's all made up. That's a very bold thing for a lawyer to make up, knowing that she's saying, we are willing to take this to court if you don't want to settle.
Yeah, it certainly remains to be seen, but I mean, it evidences that they have receipts for those things.
Yeah, why would they reveal, why would you show your cards before it's safe to do so? You're just giving them the head run on what they have to try to disprove against you.
Well, I mean, and part of what she said when issuing the initial statement was that, we have this information, we have text message, we have phone calls, so, that's, a clear indication to him that this isn't or at least rhetorically is not a empty threat. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's
and
like, okay, well,
records.
we want a settlement because we have this stuff.
Right.
Like I said, obviously we haven't made it to trial yet, so we haven't gotten to the point where that stuff would all be released yet, but they're certainly threatening to do so.
The fans just keep saying, this is just proof that she wasn't expecting him to do this, and so they weren't showing their cards because they don't actually have them, and they expected him to just throw the money at her in a settlement, and that they're actually, she's going to be shocked when he's going all the way with it. Now he's suing her. They're going to go to court over this.
Yeah, and he obviously has doubled down on his stance of, being that this is false.
But I do not believe that she didn't expect him to do that. I think she was prepared for either.
Yeah, totally. I would have to think the same thing.
Otherwise, why would she be holding them until court? I don't buy that. I would fully expect him to deny it, not settle, and take it to court.
Yeah, I mean, and it certainly remains to be seen, what information there might also be, what information she might also have, and how incriminating that might be.
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot that's not put in the claims. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's hinted at.
Again, I was given all this information from the fans. I so appreciate it. There is the whole thing about the 5 days in LA that seems to be, okay, well, maybe this is all false. Maybe this is all made up. But then there's a lot of stuff that I read in that original petition or, other thoughts of yours that actually kind of solidified my leaning that she might be telling truth. And what I told a couple fans was there's her side and his side, and then there's something in the middle. And I think that even if she's lying about it being rape, there's probably truth that they had sex. Or she could have exaggerated things in the legal papers because that's what you have to do. I'm really sick of everyone's comments.
Yeah, she claiming old injuries or the result of the assault or something. That's again, I feel like, again, to me, that's kind of the worst case scenario, is that there was a somewhat consensual that I don't know. And that then she's taking advantage of that later. But I don't believe that. That's not what I think. I think it's possible that could be the case, but I that's not what I think when I kind of put all this together at all. I tend to believe her.
Yeah. And what I was saying was, I am really sick of the repeated comment on Reddit or comments on YouTube or direct comments to me in regards to the podcast that if I just read the original petition, it will read like a poorly written smut fiction book. That is so degrading and honestly not true. This is exactly how these things are read. To imply that it's some sick fantasy smut book is really degrading, rude, disregarding any victim out there who's ever had to file a claim like this. And it's just simply not true. It's not a 50 Shades of Grey book.
Obviously, there's a lot of victim blaming going on in that community. And then, like I said, it really remains to be seen, but it's just not what I see when I see it.
Calling a legal claim of sexual assault a poorly written smut book and calling Me Too lawyers something of a derogatory term, not automatically this is just some fad, is not only offensive to this potential victim, which you've already thrown out, but to every victim out there who has to file one of these claims and describe their sexual assaults. And when humiliating things happen, like being dangled by your ankles or whatever way you've been raped in horrible, humiliating ways, that's the reason we don't want to do this. That's the reason I've never filed a claim against my rapist, right? And Me Too lawyers change the world for the better. And even if there are claims that come through because of this that are false, 4% of rape cases end up being false allegations. There's still tons more that are underreported and never reported, whatever. You cannot create this derogatory term of Me Too lawyers. It's so dismissive. It counteracts what the entire movement was that these women are not being listened to in these industries. And now, if you do any point in time after the Me Too movement, now you're just part of this Me Too movement as if it's something to be ashamed of or that should have never happened or has done more damage than good. And that's just not true.
I really think that it shouldn't be so hard to believe these stories because we know they're true and we know these things happen, but then it's so hard to know what to do about that I think we really get lost. Like, we don't know what to do about these people and whether to throw them away or not. We don't know how to feel about loving somebody at some point who could have done something horrible. We really don't know how to live in a world without the power structures that allow the positions for these people. And so we're left having to defend them because what should we do? We're left without a real good question there. And I think that that impulse, I understand that impulse of being confused and not knowing what to do about it. But I think that the reality is that we know that the fact that there are some things that aren't true or that things have been exaggerated in the past, that just does nothing to discredit how many situations and how often this happens. And you just can't really square those things.
Yeah. And, something in our life that we are criticized on for having this podcast with people who know us in real life, it doesn't align with our worldview and our politics that they kind of accuse us of having like celebrity worship, or why do you care about these people or whatever. But for me personally, I can't speak for Herman necessarily, but for me, it's like such a social experiment to me to see how people treat celebrities, or how celebrities are treated or navigate the world, and our parasocial relationships with them, and how we react when these people that we know but don't really know are accused of rape or whatever else, and the things that are said on Reddit anonymously, or things that are put in YouTube comments, are actual reflections of how we live our day-to-day lives when our uncles rape us, or we find out our neighbor is a rapist, or you find out your buddy is a rapist. And those same things that you will say to defend the celebrities that you love and doubt the victims are the same shit that we hear in our real life about the ways that the person who raped me growing up is a very well-loved person in this town, or how you'll just sort of brush off the woman who accused your buddy of rape because maybe that's just not what you talk about in your friendship. And I think that, you know, as we see changes with how the media deals with rapists, with celebrities, that we hope that we start seeing, if there's a Me Too movement for celebrities, are we getting a Me Too movement in our real life? Are people holding our rapists accountable? How are these conversations happening when it's real people face to face? So I'm personally fascinated by it. It's why I love talking on this podcast about it. Why I like having these conversations of, like you said, it's reasonable to be confused about what we do with these celebrities who are accused of this, because we're also confused on how to deal with that in our real life. And I love having those conversations. We may not always agree, but I think we won't move forward as a society without, what do we do about pedophiles? We can't just take them out to the street and shoot them. What is being a pedophile? What is being a child sex offender opportunist? What are the differences of these things? Is there rehabilitation for them? Do we forgive them? Does a rapist get to have their normal job again? Or are they forever canceled? What is being canceled? These are all the things that we're here to talk about, that I love talking about. And so again, I am grateful for the people who came and engaged with us online about this episode, whether I fully agreed or not. That's why we're here, to have those conversations. So keep reaching out.
Well, speaking of which, Lorena, do you think that Garth Brooks is a serial killer?
Oh shit, I forgot we were going to get into that. No. Just like I would say, is it reasonable to think a lot of people rape? And I would say yes. I think it's also just as unreasonable to think that in a world where, I looked up the stats, 2,300 people every day go missing in the United States, and 600,000 a year go missing. And we have this celebrity.
How many shows does Garth play?
Yes. Garth Brooks is all over the U.S., constantly touring. The chances that someone goes missing just about every night that he's on tour is much more reasonable to think that after every show he goes and murders someone.
Yeah, so Garth the Killer, the conspiracy theory.
We missed this one.
Yeah, our official. We did neglect to cover this on the past episode as well.
Another thing we listened to you guys on. You wanted to hear us talk about this.
I think that we pretty much just passed over it because we wanted to talk about this situation and didn't really think that was particularly relevant. And
I actually didn't know.
It seems it's a joke, right? That's a joke. It's a meme.
Everyone comments on his stuff and says, like, where are the bodies?
Garth,
or Chris Gaines murdered them, his alter ego.
The low-hanging fruit joke has got to be, it was Chris Gaines.
There are some inside jokes that go so far and so long on Reddit that I will brush by them because I missed it. And so I just thought it was another, like, stupid Reddit.
Yeah, if you think it could actually be some truth to this conspiracy theory, then get at us and we will come right back. We'll come at it and we'll actually take it seriously and think about it. But I thought it was just a meme, dude.
Hey, if you want to go real deep on it, we would love to do a Patreon on it. If you want to like present us with all of the people who went missing and at what concert and all that, like, oh, I live for that shit. So DM us, we will bring you on the podcast so you can do a Patreon episode with us.
Yeah, sure.
It'll be fun. Speaking of fun episodes, just, you know, as we wrap this up, we are going to have like a little fun bonus episode coming up. Mm-hmm. This one might be for the girlies. If astrology does not interest you, you know, we always talk about like, oh, what's someone's sign? Or people talk about like serial killers tend to be Cancers. I love this shit. It's just for fun. We have someone who has a somewhat new podcast out called Starry Insight. Taylor, the person who hosts it with her partner, is going to do an episode on dissecting Diddy's astrology chart.
We're going to do a chart reading for Diddy.
If you check out her podcast, she does a lot of like true crime. I was listening to the Thomas Dillon episode today, and she gives kind of a background of...
So shout out, what's the podcast called again? Go plug
Starry Insight.
Cool.
Starry Insight, yeah. And, you know, she'll go into like the background of the serial killers, you know, their childhood, and how you can see in the chart, here's evidence that he had problems with his mother. Here's evidence of the things leading up, and what does the astrology chart look like for a serial killer? And I wanted her to come on and dive deep into Diddy's chart. I want to see where freak-offs lay in his planets.
Okay, so our Patreon, for our Patreon subscribers, we have some new content coming for you. So
that one is actually going to be on, I think we should do the Garth on our Patreon. That one is going to be on the feed because it's a shared podcast with.
Okay, that'll be on the feed then, but we do have Patreon exclusive episodes coming too. This is also part of the plan.
Yeah, so support us there. It really does help us continue to put out episodes, because if you're paying us, we can devote our time to be more consistent in putting out material. So
yeah, thank you so much to our subscribers that have stuck with us. You're all awesome. We really appreciate you. It's really great that you listen to this pod and that you appreciate it. We appreciate you. And we got some content coming for you now.
Yeah, and more fun content on the Patreon. I think people want to hear a little bit more about like our personal lives, wedding planning, or
Sure they do.
More. They have asked, and they've been begging us to show our faces.
How's my golf game going?
Yeah, how's your golf? They want to see our faces, and I cannot convince Herman to reveal on video, do some videos on there. But
it's going to take a few more subscribers. 1,000 subscribers.
1,000 subscribers, you get to see Herman's face.
Yeah, video podcast at 1,000 subscribers.
The problem is we have to shower before we podcast. We have to get ready. And
we do this. We do this while the baby's asleep.
Yeah, we're in toddler life, so don't expect much. Okay. We're wrapping up. This was a lot longer than I thought. Thank you, guys.
We didn't get to everything even, of course, but we never do.
But next up, real episode, not just bonus fun ones, is Neve Schulman. Almost done. We're recording.
Neve episode. Yes. I guess we're doing it.
Oh, because it was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. So
we got some dirt.
I'm more excited on it. So.
The catfish dirt.
All right. Signing off. Bye, Herman.
Bye.
What is it? Who are you?
I'm Garth Brooks. I'm a country singer, and I don't know why, but I just can't get you out of my head.
Do you think I care? Now get out of my dressing room. Mango has to do Pilates.
But I want to get to know you, Mango.
Can you know the mighty ocean? Can you lasso a star from the sky? Can you say to a rainbow, hey, stop being a rainbow for a second? No, such is Mango.
But I brought you these flowers and these little bath soaps from someplace called Aveda.
You think that impresses me? Look at all these other grips I have. This is a body lotion from Ben Affleck. And this is a poem from the guy who plays Greg from Dom and Greg. Nobody! The Mango need none of these things. Don't get out.
I feel like such a fool. I guess we'll be going.
Yes, that's right. I hate you.
But...
No, get out.
Oh, don't tease me that way.
What? I don't tease you.
Oh, there you go again.
What are you talking about?
There, see?
See what? You're crazy. Get away from Mango.
Goodbye, Mango.
Goodbye, Garth Brooks. Mango!
Oh, Mango, what have you done to me?
Mango!